Part 113. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1123. Mu Yangling didn't receive Mu Shi's letter until he returned to the capital, so he couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. In order to coax her well, Qi Heiran could only keep showing her the scenery along the road. Mu Yangling could only smile to prevent him from worrying, but he was really in a bad mood. But no matter how bad my mood was, it became better when I saw a group of children at the gate of the city. Xiaoan and his younger brothers were standing at the gate of the city looking around. When they saw the carriage of the palace, the children immediately cheered, jumped off the pony and ran towards the side. The tiger head and the little lion were still holding the little leopard and the orb in their hands. Qi Heiran hurriedly jumped out of the carriage and took the dragon and phoenix twins in their hands, hugged them, and said fiercely to the two boys, "How can you pull your siblings like this? It's almost flying into the sky." The tiger head and the little lion ignored him at all, jumped over him and jumped on the little bear, shouting for brother, and then asked where the presents they brought were. When Mu Yangling jumped out of the carriage, the children turned to besiege Mu Yangling. Qi Heiran withdrew his eyes, stared at the youngest son and daughter in his arms for a while, then smiled and said, "Daddy also brought you a gift, will Daddy take you to see it?" Little Leopard and Basil looked at each other, and burst into tears with a resolute wow. Pushing away his father's face, he stretched out his hands to the second and third brothers, and shouted, "Hug, hug." Qi Heiran was stunned, he hugged the twins and let go, and he didn't let go, he went to see Mu Yangling sweating profusely. Mu Yangling hurriedly took the two children from his arms, and coaxed them, don't cry, mother is here." However, after being separated for more than half a year, the dragon and phoenix twins no longer remember the appearance of their parents. Although they usually quarrel with their brothers for their parents, but when they really saw each other, they recognized their birth. Even if Mu Yangling played in person, it was useless. To hug the tiger head and the little lion. Mu Yangling could only squat down and put the two children down. The tiger head and the little lion rushed over and shouted at them, "Don't cry, they are all ugly." Hudu even threatened, "If you cry again, I won't give you ribs tonight." Qi Heiran raised his eyebrows, and before he had time to beat up the two boys, the twins stopped crying, with a tear that didn't live up to it, and looked at the two brothers with wet round eyes. Qi Heiran's heart softened all at once, and he tried to threaten his two sons with wide eyes, warning them not to threaten his younger siblings again. However, the tiger head and the little lion didn't look at him. Naturally, they didn't see their father's eyes, but they were not hard-hearted. Seeing that the younger brothers and sisters stopped crying, they nodded in satisfaction, and even lifted up their sleeves and wiped them with disgust. With tears in his eyes, he said perfunctorily, "Okay, I'll give you a lot of meat to eat tonight, and now we'll take you to see Big Brother. Don't cry anymore, otherwise we won't play with you in the future." Xiaoan also squeezed in and touched their heads and said, "Don't you usually argue for your parents and elder brother? These are your parents and elder brother." The twins looked at the three with reddish eyes. Not only Qi Heiran and Mu Yangling, but also little Xiang looked at them expectantly. After all, little Leopard and Basil were a little shy. They hid behind the twins and secretly watched the three of them. Qi Heiran felt sore and astringent. He held Mu Yangling's hand and said, "It's okay, they will recognize us after a while." Little Xiang took a group of younger brothers to the carriage behind. He took out the gift list he had prepared, and decided to distribute presents to everyone on the way back. Qi Heiran saw that the twins were able to get together and joke with his brothers, so he relaxed, took Mu Yangling's hand and said, "It was really hard for you before." Mu Yangling's eyes were also red, and he turned to look at him suspiciously. Qi Heiran explained, "Little bear and tiger-headed little lion also left me for a long time when they were young. Although they recognized me when they saw me, but you can recognize me quickly. Unlike now, he can scare them to tears when he hugs twins, so the child should still have an adult by his side. Both the couple returned home with distress for the twins, but the twins obviously didn't take this matter to heart. When they returned to the palace, they had already recognized that the little bear was called Big Brother, not only Big Brother, but also Little Leopard. Hanging on the elder brother's waist, insisting that he carry him in, Bezu also lay on the little bear's back. Obviously he didn't want to walk by himself. Looking at his eldest son who is so popular, Chi felt as sour as if he had knocked over 5 vats of vinegar. But Mu Yangling didn't have any extra thoughts. Xiao Xia had already come out to welcome them, and they still had to hand over the things in the mansion. Xiao Xia asked, "Will you eat at home tonight, or enter the palace, or come to join us?" Mu Yangling also wanted to learn more about the daily life of the children in the capital, so he chose the former without even thinking about it. "After I settle down, I will go to the palace to pay my respects to the Empress, and then I will invite you to get together." Chi Heiran obviously meant the same thing, and he was fair to Mr. Wan who came to invite him in person. "There are too many things at home, so I won't enter the palace today. I will enter the palace again tomorrow to greet the emperor. If the emperor asks, I will. Wang's injury is healed, and now it's no problem to mount a horse and hunt." Eunuch Wan didn't dare to insist. He left politely, and brought back the guards who escorted the princes out of the palace and out of the city. So Chi Xiaoyuan quickly understood the reason why Chi Heiran didn't enter the palace. He and Eunuch Wan laughed and said, "He is in a hurry to please his son and daughter. Little Leopard and Bezu are only 2 years old. Children of this age I don't remember anything, but I see that they have been very happy in the past 20 days, and I really don't see where they miss their parents, and he thinks too much of himself for being so eager." Seeing that the emperor and the 2 baby dolls were jealous, Eunuch Wan laughed quickly and said, "Isn't this the prince who scared the little prince and princess into tears just now? If you don't rush to coax the child, how about the child crying every time he sees him?" Chi Xiaoyuan thought about it too, and became cheerful. "That's right, let him take another 2 days off and let him coax the children well." Chi Heiran was indeed sweating profusely to make the child happy. He took out all the gifts prepared by him and Mu Yangling for the children and distributed them to them personally, and even snatched the gifts prepared by Xiao Xiang for a big distribution, so as to make a good impression on the children and brush up the dragons and phoenixes' goodwill. Before Mu Yangling was ready for dinner, Chi Heiran had already obtained the unanimous approval of the twins, and had already put them on his neck and ran around the room. The little Leopard and Bezu hugged their father's head and giggled and laughed. The cheerful laughter spread directly to the dining room. After hearing this, Xiao Xia praised, "Fourth uncle has a solution. Little Leopard and Bezu were avoiding him just now, and now they are playing together." Mu Yangling temporarily decided to take the 2 children to Fifei tomorrow, so he must not fall behind Chi Heiran. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1124. Mu Yangling said that he would spend the evening at home, but it was impossible. Xiao Xia helped Mu Yangling prepare dinner. Xiaoan and Xiaofu were receiving gifts in the side hall, and there was constant giggle laughter, so Fan Zijin went to the palace without even entering the house as soon as he returned to his own home. His wife and children are all here, so he can't go home and live by himself. So tonight this meal is still eaten by the 2 families. Chi Heiran has successfully won the hearts of the twins, and they insisted on sitting next to their father and eating with him during meals. Chi Heiran glanced at his wife proudly, and put them next to each other after holding them for 2 hours, completely ignoring table manners. Fan Zijin was very disdainful about this, and turned to ask Hutu and the little lion, "Your parents have been away for so long, did Little Leopard and Bezu cry for their parents?" The tiger head and the little lion shook their heads immediately. "The younger brother and younger sister are so good, they just argue for meat, and never argue for their parents." Satisfied, Fan Zijin scooped up a spoonful of meat soup for Little Leopard and Bezu, and said with a smile, "I like to eat meat, eat more, if it's not enough for uncle, I'll serve it to you. The two children immediately buried their heads in hard work, and took the time to look up at Uncle Fan gratefully. Fan Zijan gave Chi Heiran a sideways look, expressing his meaning with his eyes. Look, you are not so important to your son and daughter, you are not as important as a spoonful of meat soup. Hutu and the little lion still felt that their father had not had enough knives in his chest, so they made up the knife and said, "It was we who told our brothers and sisters about our parents, otherwise they would definitely not remember you." The little lion also deliberately added credit, "We said that daddy will bring them fun things, and mother will bring them delicious food, so they will remember daddy and mother." Zioan and Ziofu also quickly raised their hands to express that they often speak well of the fourth uncle and the fourth aunt in front of the twins, so they also have credit, suggesting that the fourth uncle has fun and don't forget them. Fan Zijan couldn't help laughing out loud. Chi Heiran became angry from embarrassment. "What do you say when you eat? How did the master teach you etiquette? Copy the books for me tomorrow." The four children immediately hunched their necks and buried their heads in eating. Fan Zijan said cheerfully, "It's okay, this is all at home, so it's okay to be casual." Mu Yangling couldn't see it, and said, "If you want to fight, you should fight on your own, don't use children as rafts." Xiao Xia also tugged on Fan Zijan's sleeve. The two of them stopped talking and ate quietly. Xiao Xia breathed a sigh of relief, and said to Mu Yangling in private, when the two brothers didn't see each other, they read very tightly, and when they met, they pinched again. Did they do this before? Mu Yangling thought of his childhood, shook his head and said, "Heiran used to listen to Zijan's words. Zijan said to go east, he would never go west, but Zijan has always disliked Heiran, but I am used to disliking him." Chi Heiran and Fan Zijan also treated it like a regular meal. After eating, Chi Heiran saw off the guests with a look of disgust on his face, and then told him clearly that he would take the children to a horse race tomorrow morning, so he would not go to court, but just go to the imperial study meeting. Let him ask for leave for him. Fan Zijan, everyone is still waiting for you to discuss meritorious deeds and rewards together. If you don't go tomorrow, how many people will hate you? It has been more than 20 days since their group returned to the court, and most of them have been rewarded for their merits and deeds. Only a few important people stayed until the end, such as him, such as Rongxian, such as several generals who brought troops back to Beijing, because Chi Heiran, the biggest hero, has not returned to Beijing, so everyone is waiting. Because of this, Chi Ziyuan had no choice but to send a letter to urge them to come back, and sent an imperial edict, but this one didn't go to the morning court when he came back, just because he was going to go horse racing with a few children? Chi Heiran sighed, "It can't be helped, the tiger head and the little lion are fine, you have seen the little leopard and Beizu, they don't know me as a father at all, if they don't strike while the iron is hot, maybe they will forget it tomorrow. Who am I now?" Fan Zijan, the child is not even 3 years old, how many things can he remember? You will be together day and night, and I don't believe they won't remember you. You have to go to court tomorrow. Chi Heiran poked his neck and said, "I promised the children, how can I break my word? What should the children do in the future?" Fan Zijan threw himself up in anger, and decided to arrest him early tomorrow morning, turned around and left angrily. Chi Heiran turned around and went back to continue cultivating feelings with the children. To be fair, Chi Heiran said that the tiger head and the little lion could sleep with them tonight, but the twins clamped the eldest brother on the left and the right with a look of disgust, saying that they would sleep with the eldest brother tonight, not with their parents and younger brother. My sister squeezed. Chi Heiran. Xiao Xiang led the two younger brothers down with a smile. Chi Heiran looked at Mu Yangling with a puffy face. "These two brats are starting to dislike us now, will we be able to pay back when we get old?" Holding the drowsy twins in his arms, Mu Yangling lowered his voice and said, "The tiger head and the little lion are not young anymore, it's normal not to cling to their parents. But they're not that old. Chi Heiran muttered, took the little son from her arms and put him on the bed. Mu Yangling put the orb beside the little leopard, and poked him, hurry up and sleep, I'm tired after driving for so long. Mu Yangling knew that Chi Heiran had to go to court early the next morning, so he woke up as soon as the o'clock arrived, but Chi Heiran woke up earlier than her, and had already washed and dressed. Seeing him holding the two children in his arms with a thin quilt, Mu Yangling asked with wide eyes, where are you going to take them? I promised them yesterday that I would take them to Zishan to watch the sunrise and ride a horse. I can't break my promise. Mu Yangling, aren't you going to court early? Chi Heiran coughed lightly, and said in a low voice, I have already asked Zijin to ask for leave for me. It's still early, so you can sleep a little longer. I'll go hug the tiger head and the little lion. The two of them are going too. Mu Yangling hesitated, do you want me to go too? Don't. Chi Heiran saw her sleepy eyes, and said distressedly, you go to sleep, there are guards here, let them hold the child, they won't be cold. Mu Yangling was already extremely sleepy and woke up relying on great self-control. At this time, after hearing what Chi Heiran said, she fell asleep again in a daze, but she felt that Li Shun came in after a short nap. Your Majesty, the Duke is waiting outside the mansion for the prince to go to court with him. Mu Yangling woke up in a jerk, and said in surprise, didn't the prince go out to watch the sun? Li Shun was very helpless, I hope that the manager will return to the Duke of the country in the same way, but the Duke of the country doesn't believe it, so he insists on coming in to see it in person, saying that it is not yet dawn, how can he go out to ride a horse at this time, and as for watching the sunrise, when will the prince come, with this leisurely mood? You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1125. Fan Zijin knew Chi Heiran best, but he didn't believe that he would get up early in the morning and run to watch the sun rise. As for riding a horse, it was dark, how could he ride? What's more, he came to block people a quarter of an hour earlier than usual, and he was confident that Chi Heiran would still be blocked in the mansion by him. Mu Yangling came out to meet him in person, looked at him and said speechlessly, Heiran has gone out early, and said he was taking the children out to watch the sunrise, didn't he ask you to ask for leave for him? Fan Zijin glared at her, turned around and left, gnashing his teeth a bit. Mu Yangling sighed, Chi Heiran was too energetic recently, so he got up so early just to make Zijin lose his temper. Mu Yangling shook his head, turned around and went back to sleep. But Chi Heiran, who was riding on the horse with the orb in his arms, looked back triumphantly, and led a group of guards out of the city to the West Mountain in embarrassment. Fan Zijin didn't expect Chi Heiran to love children so much that he was really willing to take the children to see the sunrise so early, and Chi Ziyuan didn't expect Chi Heiran to be such a bastard. It's fine if he didn't report in the palace on the first day in Beijing, and the second did not come early in the morning. And the hero who was eager to reward his meritorious deeds glared at Fan Zijin's back. Fan Zijin calmly stepped forward to help Chi Heiran ask for leave under the fire-like eyes of the crowd. Of course, he would not say that Chi Heiran took the children to see the sunrise, he only said that Chi Heiran had been on the road for several days, and his wounds were not completely healed. So he can't come to the early court, but he will definitely come to the imperial study room after the court meeting to discuss politics. Except for Chi Ziyuan, all the ministers' faces softened. Everyone had heard about Chi Heiran's injury. It was said that he almost couldn't be saved at that time, and his heart was hurt. Xinmei, such a dangerous place, it is possible that the condition may relapse. But Chi Ziyuan stared at Fan Zijin for a long time, snorted softly, and said flatly, understood, leave. After the court meeting was over, he led Fanzijan to the imperial study room first. He raised his eyebrows and said, "Tell me, what did that kid do?" Fanzijan lowered his head and whispered, "Little Leopard and Bezu didn't recognize him." In order to please the children, he agreed to take them to the West Mountain to watch the sunrise last night in a fit of excitement, so he left early in the morning. Fanzijan took a careful look at the emperor's expression, and seeing that his expression was slightly relaxed, he knew there was something going on, and hurriedly said, before he wanted to hold the little Leopard and Bezu, the two children were scared to cry, and he opened his hands as long as the tiger's head and the little one hugged by a lion, his eyes are red now. Fanzijan talked nonsense, trying to portray Chi Heiran as a loving father who felt guilty, and Chi Ziyuan's complexion really improved a lot. Fanzijan heaved a sigh of relief, and Chi Ziyuan sighed, "Forget it, but a few ministers are coming soon, he can't be late anymore, you go to the palace gate to see for yourself, if he comes, bring him in quickly." Fanzijan agreed and went to pick him up in person. At this time, Chi Heiran had just finished watching the sunrise with the children, and was strolling back happily. When he reached the corner, he handed the orb to the guards behind him, and coaxed the children, "Daddy wants to go back now, go to work, and when I come back in the evening, I will take you to see the sunset, okay?" The four children nodded excitedly. Bezu and Xiaobeizai were very reluctant to part with their father, and looked at him pitifully with round eyes. "Daddy, shall we enter the palace with you?" Chi Heiran agreed as soon as his head got hot. The tiger head and the little lion rolled their eyes, expressing their willingness to follow them into the palace to take care of their younger siblings. Chi Heiran thought that he would definitely have to visit the emperor's wife when he entered the palace, and he happened to leave the four children in Cunning Palace at that time, so he agreed with a big wave of his hand. So the teams that were supposed to be divided into two teams merged together and went to the palace. Fortunately, Chi Heiran still remembered Mu Yangling who stayed at home, so he asked someone to go back and inform her, so as not to worry her. There were a lot of people in the group, and with the addition of 4 screaming children, the movement was not small, and it was difficult for everyone to wonder if they entered the imperial city. When some people saw King Rong enter the imperial city from outside at this time, they all expressed surprise. Shouldn't King Rong have just ended the court meeting? How did he come in from the outside? This is the thought of an official who is not qualified to participate in the court meeting but travels to and from the imperial city due to official business. The officials who were lucky enough to attend the court meeting widened their eyes to see the ruddy King Rong, who was riding valiantly on a horse, and thought foolishly, so this is the King Rong who could not attend the court meeting due to a relapse of an old injury. Some officials were not afraid of death and raised their voices and asked, "My lord, where are you from?" Chi Heiran flaunted, "Come back from outside the city, there's nothing I can do." As soon as a few children saw this king, they clamored for me to take them to watch the sunrise. All the ministers. Hearing the movement, Fanzijan rushed out of the palace, and Chi Heiran glared at him angrily. He just talked to his left and right counterparts for a while on the road, so he was lazy and only stood at the gate of the palace instead of the gate of the imperial city. In the end, this man stabbed him like this big basket. Today's leave note was written by him himself. Chi Heiran looked at the furious Fanzijan, shut up decisively, got off the horse with Bezu in his arms, and ran to his side in a bumpy manner. "Bezu, this is Uncle Fan, quickly call Uncle Fan." Fanzijan ignored his playful smile, and almost gritted his teeth and said, "Today, the court master gave you sick leave, saying that your old injury relapsed and you couldn't go to the morning court, but you turned around and said that you accompanied the children to watch the sunrise." Chi Heiran put away his smiling face, and said seriously, "Who said that the king accompanied the children to watch the sunrise?" They clamored for the king to take them, but the king was ill, so he asked the guards to take them. When the king was about to enter the palace, he met them and came back from watching the sunrise, thinking that he had not met the empress before, so he brought them into the palace. Chi Heiran purposely increased his voice so that officials who stopped nearby or passed by could hear him. All the ministers. Fan Zijan. Although shameless, Fan Zijan still looked slightly relaxed, turned around and said, "Okay, the emperor and all the ministers are waiting for you, let's go to the palace quickly." Chi Heiran hurriedly handed the orb to a guard, and asked them to bring the 4 children into the palace, and someone would come to pick them up to Cunning Palace. The news of the imperial city spread quickly, and what happened here soon spread throughout the imperial palace, except for the imperial study room where the government was being discussed. Therefore, when they saw Chi Heiran with a serious face, all the important officials in the imperial study looked at his friendly smile and eyes, except Chi Ziyuan. The important ministers in the imperial study could not receive any news from outside, but the emperor was different. Eunuch Wan came in cautiously and reported to the emperor what happened outside the palace gate and in the imperial city. So when Chi Heiran came in, Chi Ziyuan glared at him. Fortunately, none of the courtiers here dared to look directly at the emperor, so no one noticed. Chi Heiran gave his eldest brother a flattering smile, found his own position and stood up first. Chi Ziyuan snorted secretly, but had no choice but to ask the inner eunuch to bring up the chairs for all the ministers to sit on. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1126. In the past 20 days, Chi Ziyuan had already planned the rewards for the meritorious officials. Whether it was official titles or gold, silver, and jewelry, what needed to be delayed until now was the issue of enfeoffment for Chi Heiran. Long before the expedition, all the ministers had a premonition that Chi Heiran might be crowned prince after the battle, and once the army returned to court, Chi Ziyuan did reveal that he wanted to crown Chi Heiran as prince, and at that time he would be crowned prince. And his fief. Because he will be the first prince to be entrusted by Daki, so it is very important, we have to wait until he returns to Beijing. Before that, Chi Ziyuan had never asked Chi Heiran what kind of fiefdom he wanted, because in his understanding, his younger brother would naturally go to a border town to live up to his status as a famous general. Those who can discuss politics in the imperial study are all officials of the 3rd grade or above. They know that the entrustment of King Rong is just the beginning. As the princes grow up, there will be many such entrustments in the future, because the entrustment of each era is different. Now the enfeoffment of King Rongjun is a benchmark, and the enfeoffment of princes and princes in Daki will be based on this in the future. Therefore, all the important ministers in the imperial study paid special attention to it. Before Chi Heiran could speak, Rongxian, as the representative of the ministers, asked questions about the rights that the vassal king had in the fiefdom. Chi Ziyuan had been discussing the enfeoffment with Rongxian and Fan Zijan, knowing that he was acting as a bridge between the monarch and his ministers, so he talked about the rights and obligations of the feudal king that had been discussed before. In a word, the vassal king wanted to accord to the name of the vassal, control the key points, and divide the country to control the country, so as to avoid the tragic fate of the previous dynasty being captured by foreigners. In order to prevent the vassal kings from splitting up, the kings only have titles but not the people, and divide the vassals but not the land. They only have titles and military power, and have no right to govern fief officials and people. The ministers discussed a lot, half of them agreed, and half of them were hesitant, thinking that the emperor gave too much power to King Rong, and now 2/3 of the military power in Daki was in the hands of King Rong. In his hands, if the Taiyuan area is entrusted to King Rong, it may be detrimental to the Daki dynasty in the future. Now they are brothers, but can their children and grandchildren be brothers? Therefore, 1/3 of the ministers and workers present tactfully persuaded the emperor, either, you can change the fiefdom for King Rongjun, or you can take back part of the military power in his hands. If you both take back the military power and change the fiefdom, then better. Considering that Chi Heiran was present, everyone didn't dare to speak too clearly, lest they be suspected of provoking the royal brothers. Chi Xiuyuan and Fan Zijin both understood, their faces were a little gloomy, only Chi Heiran didn't understand, he was still rubbing his chin seriously thinking. Chi Xiuyuan said, "Brother Emperor, or you can seal me up in the coastal area, this way I will be closer to you, and I am familiar with the sea. The key is that Aling likes the sea very much, and it will be convenient for everyone to visit in the future." Chi Xiuyuan /U0026 Fan Zijin. All the ministers who opposed before took a careful look at King Rong, and found that he was telling the truth. They all breathed a sigh of relief in their hearts, and raised their heads confidently. "Your Majesty, it is not us who are sowing discord, but King Rong." "I thought so. Rong Xian has a bit of a headache." "Could it be that your Majesty didn't get angry with King Rong before the meeting?" Chi Xiuyuan really didn't communicate with Chi Heiran, because he wanted to give him a surprise, but at this time the surprise didn't come true, and he was frightened. Chi Xiuyuan waved his hand and let all the ministers go out first, leaving only Chi Heiran and Fan Zijin. Taiyuan has always been a place that military strategists must contend for. "Once you stay, I want Taiyuan to be your fief, and I want you to guard Taiyuan for generations." Chi Xiuyuan looked at his younger brother with a headache and said, "Furthermore, Taiyuan has a vast territory and is considered affluent. It's much better than the coastal areas." "Why do you want to go to the coastal areas?" Chi Heiran scratched his head and said, "Little Bear has been clamoring to conquer the sea before, this position will be passed to him sooner or later, so naturally he should be the main one, and," Chi Heiran glanced at his elder brother carefully, said in a low voice, "Aling also likes the sea, and said that he would go out to sea to have fun in the future." Fan Zijin said angrily, "What are you asking? I'll give him Taiyuan. If I want to go to the coast, I don't even have a window." Chi Heiran was angry, "Why are you like this?" Fan Zijin glared at him, "I really don't know good people. My cousin and I worked so hard to choose such a fief for you." Seeing that the two were about to fight, Chi Xiuyuan said angrily, "Okay, you all shut up." Chi Xiuyuan turned his head and glared at Chi Heiran, "I reckon you have to go back and ask your wife about this matter? In this case, don't hold any palace banquet tonight, you go home and discuss it with your wife, and then tell me when you have made up your mind." They kicked them out together. Fan Zijin was so angry that he couldn't help kicking Chi Heiran. Chi Heiran jumped away and Fan Zijin could only stare at him. Chi Heiran scratched his head, smiled flatteringly at him, and said, "I know you are doing it for my own good. Taiyuan belongs to the northern region. I really like the atmosphere there, and it is rich there. I'm afraid that even a few princes may not be able to do it like me. It's an honor to be sealed in such a good place." Fan Zijin snorted softly and said, "You still don't know what's good. But Aling and I have already said that when the children are older, I will travel around with her. Moreover, I am also reluctant to part with you and Brother Huang. I will probably return to the capital to live in the future when I get old. In this case, the fief naturally has to choose a place that Xiaoxiang likes and is close to the capital." Fan Zijin's face turned pale. Chi Heiran continued, "Little Xiang has never been to the Northland before, but he has spent a long time in Lingnan and the coast. When he was in Guangzhou, he used to talk about conquering the sea. Taiyuan is so far away from the sea. He is really disappointed to have Taiyuan as a fief." Fan Zijin let out a breath and snorted, "Since you have made up your mind, I will not persuade you anymore. The courtiers in the court are so happy to see that you chose the coastal area." Chi Heiran chuckled, "Since everyone is happy, let's make it so. You guys are happy, master is not happy." Fan Zijin walked away arrogantly. Chi Heiran had no choice but to run after him, staying in the Fan mansion until it was dark before running back to the Wang mansion for dinner. Just as Mu Yangling picked up the 4 children from the palace, Chi Heiran couldn't help staring when he saw Padian coming back. "Where did you go this afternoon? Why did you leave the 4 children in the palace?" Chi Heiran looked at the 4 children dumbfounded. he forgot the children in the palace. Mu Yangling understood when he saw his expression, and couldn't help but look at him with a tiger's face. Qi Heiran immediately shouted, "I went to discuss important matters with Zijin, and the master said, it's getting dark now, you must go back and bring the children back, so I went straight back to the palace. What is so important that you can forget about your children? Brother Huang wants to grant me a fiefdom. Isn't it a headache to choose where to choose, so I discussed it with Zijin," Qi Heiran said with a slightly guilty conscience. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1127. Fiefdom. Mu Yangling's eyes widened. Didn't the former Emperor Sejong no longer entrust feudal princes? The previous dynasty is the previous dynasty, and this dynasty is the current dynasty, Qi Heiran said. If the previous dynasty had vassal kings guarding the border, Dajin and Zixia would not be able to occupy a large area of my country. Mu Yangling disagreed and said, the Great Zhou will lose a large area of land because Emperor Jiaozong moved his army inward, and instead of defending against foreign enemies, he guarded against the people. In addition, after Emperor Sejong emphasized civility over military affairs, unscrupulous generals in the army were available. Does the feudal king have half a penny to do with it? After Qin Shi Huang unified the 6 countries, he abolished the enfeoffment system and changed it to the prefecture and county system. After the establishment of the Han dynasty, the enfeoffment system was adopted again, but it was also quite different from the previous one. It belonged to the combination of enfeoffment and prefectures and counties. For thousands of years, although the enfeoffment system has always existed, it has been weakened. It was not until Emperor Sejong of the previous dynasty that he abolished the vassal system. Before, so the prince had to stay in the capital and not leave the capital. Mu Yangling didn't think it was right for Sejong to restrict the growth of the royal children, but it was absolutely correct for him to abolish the vassal system. The existence of the vassal system is extremely easy to split a country, and the Han and Jin dynasties are 2 living examples. Mu Yangling and Qi Heiran said, people's selfishness will swell. Heiran, I don't agree with enfeoffment. Xiaobao and Xiaoxiang have a good relationship, even if they don't fight for rights. What about their descendants? If you want to cut power, if you want to get more power, the Great Qi will be in chaos. The Han and Tang dynasties have been working hard to weaken the power of the vassal kings for hundreds of years. Emperor Sejong risked his life to abolish the vassal system. Are we going to go back now? In the end, is it even worse than the Han dynasty 1,000 years ago? Qi Heiran frowned. He really didn't think so much. He is the elder brother's younger brother, and he also has military merits. Being named a prince is a matter of course, and a rich fief should also be granted, but Aling said that the system, his cognition is wrong. Mu Yangling knew that he couldn't accept what he said once, so he hurriedly turned around and sent the children to sleep, and then turned around and led him into the room to elaborate. In history, there are countless incidents in which the country was in chaos or the country's power was weakened due to the reduction of vassals and the rebellion of vassal kings. Mu Yangling didn't even need to read history books. Children and grandchildren are also ordinary people, and they will also fight for power and profit. Emperor Sejong has done a good job, directly cutting off their capital of chaos. Qi Heiran said in displeasure, then my descendants of the Qi family will be like the royal family of the Great Zhou, living on the clan's salary like this? Then after 5 generations, they will be reduced to common people, maybe not even as good as Lu Suant who sells straw sandals. That's also because they are too incompetent, Mu Yangling said. They were born into the royal family, and they have so many resources and advantages over others, but they are still mixed up like this. My suggestion is that we should not restrict the royal family's imperial examinations, business, and joining the army. No matter what they want to do, they have to fight with the common people. After the 2nd generation, if you want to be an official, you can take the imperial examination and compete with scholars all over the world. If you want to do business, You also have to pay taxes. You also have to abide by the law. You can also join the army. 360 lines, so many which industry can't do it? They were born in the royal family, they can receive a good education since they were young, and they have contacts and resources that others don't have. Don't blame us. Chi Heiran looked at his wife speechlessly. Mu Yangling continued, don't listen to me, think about it, the whole Daki is only big, your prince occupies a large area of Taiyuan, and the emperor has 6 sons, except for Xiaobao, you have to go outside conferring 5 princes, even if the fiefs they get are not as big and rich as yours, but the last time is 5 counties. For one thing, it won't take a few generations. Unless the prince who is sealed off changes, he will cut off his sons and grandchildren, or the emperor will be unsealed in a few generations. What can he do? He can only think about cutting the vassal, and the vassal king will be willing to take it. Will the benefits be handed over? When the time comes, there will be another chaos in Daki. These are things that have happened repeatedly in history. The 5 Kingdoms Rebellion in the Han Dynasty is the most famous representative. Seeing Chi Heiran's gloomy face, Mu Yangling continued, and this is just one of the main contradictions. The secondary contradictions include the disputes between the princes within the vassal, the struggle between the vassal states, and the conflict between the vassal king and the local officials and the interests of the people. Because of a vassal system, how much trouble has this dekeeping caused? Seeing Chi Heiran lowering his eyes and thinking deeply, Mu Yangling stopped disturbing his thinking, untied his hair and lay down beside him, yawned and said, I still say the same thing, children and grandchildren have their own blessings, we have given them the way it's over, they insist on bumping into a ball on the road and knocking us down, but we have all the money and power, as long as we live happily, there is really no need to set up a fief to work hard, so don't want this land anymore. Chi Heiran said after a long time, didn't we break the children's ambition? Mu Yangling heard it in a daze, and said vaguely, Da Chi is so old, are they still worried that they can't realize their ambitions? Chi Heiran didn't sleep all night, and the next day he went to Xiao Xiang's room with dark circles to dig him up, looked at him seriously and asked, Wenjian, if the father refuses to entrust the land, will you blame the father? Little Xiang fell into a drowsy sleep, subconsciously felt that his father was testing him, and immediately reflexively said, the enfeoffment system was abolished in Qin Shi Huang's time, and the vassal kingship system was abolished by the former emperor Sejong. Daddy, do you want me to write a theory? Is it a policy theory of the adverse effects of the enfeoffment system and the vassal system? Chi Heiran. Chi Heiran looked at his bewildered son, and pressed his son on the bed with his fingers. He said with a wooden face, okay, you can continue to sleep, you have never been a father before. Chi Heiran turned around and went into the palace. Today's early court people came very well. As long as they are qualified to go to court, everyone came to join in the fun. The news from the palace yesterday said that today's court meeting may produce the first prince and vassal king of Daki. Everyone really wants to join in the fun. Chi Ziyuan has already decided to reward the biggest meritorious officials today, so his face is beaming, and the faces of all the ministers are also beaming when they see it. This time the Battle of Gold Destruction can be said to be a complete victory, not only regaining the lost land, and also got most of Dakin's property. After the rewards are finished this time, the palace will definitely hold a palace banquet, and their son, daughter, is also getting old, so they can also communicate with each other during this time. Chi Ziyuan's rewards ranged from low to high. Rong Xian was conferred the title of Grand Master and 2 generations of nobles for his meritorious service with the Crown Prince in supervising the country. And Fan Zijin was promoted to the title of King of Anjun by Dukan, hereditary successor, and Chi Heiran was conferred the title of Prince Rong by King Rongjun, also hereditary successor. Chi Ziyuan asked Chi Heiran, yesterday, I chose Taiyuan as your fief. You don't like it? Now you have chosen the fief. All the ministers looked at Chi Haoran one after another. Chi Haoran stepped out with a sullen face, cupped his hands and said, "Report to the emperor, I don't want to entrust the land." The smile on Chi Ziyuan's face gradually disappeared, and he frowned at him. Chi Haoran raised his head slightly and said, "Emperor Sejong has abolished the vassal system since the previous dynasty. I personally think that this is a wonderful move, and we should permanently abolish the vassal system." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1128. The court was quiet. Chi Ziyuan stared slightly at his younger brother. All the ministers also looked at Chi Haoran in shock. How could such a matter be brought up by King Rongjun? He is about to confiscate the feudal land. Shouldn't it be that they knelt on the ground and begged the emperor not to confer the feudal land, and then the king of Rongjun confronted them with red ears and a thick neck? Why is it the other way around now? They agree, but King Rong himself opposes it. Chi Haoran didn't know the shock of the people behind him. Seeing his elder brother standing there in a daze, he justly embellished what Aling said to persuade him last night. As Aling said, generals can be used to guard the border and defend the country. As long as both civil and military are advanced, unlike the previous dynasty, which emphasizes civil and military affairs, even if there is no vassal king to guard the border, he can still defend his home and country, and even avoid many conflicts of interest. Chi Haoran had already thought it through last night, and took advantage of the opportunity to propose expanding the scale of martial arts, and making martial arts like the Imperial College, regardless of whether the superiors value literature over martial arts, or emphasize martial arts over literature. A certain number of martial arts students must be trained every year, and to ensure their quality. Only in this way, regardless of the character and ability of the emperor who ascends the throne in the future, Daki can at least ensure continuous civil and military affairs, and the country can be prosperous and stable. This was what Chi Haoran came up with after thinking about it last night, and it was just an unformed idea, but he was very proud of it. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that this policy could make Daki's long-term peace and stability. If he couldn't turn back, he would definitely go to the officials carefully the look on the face. However, the officials did not pay attention to the second half of what he said, and all their minds were on completely abolishing the vassal system. The emperor wanted to grant a fiefdom to King Rongjun, and other courtiers were fine. Those who had daughters as concubines in the palace were all moved, especially the concubines who had given birth to princes. Their hearts were fluttering one after another. The emperors of this dynasty chose their concubines from the families of officials below the third rank. They didn't have much power, and the empress was favored. Not much help. But it's different when the prince's entrustment goes out. They say it's also the prince's natal family. At that time, they can choose a girl from the family to marry the prince as a concubine or concubine. It's no problem to prosper for another 20 or 30 years with the right of the grandson. No matter how bad the children and grandchildren are, they can still find a good job in the prince's fief with the help of the relationship of the natal family. But now Chi Haoran cut off all their dreams with one sentence. They secretly looked at the emperor on the dragon chair, knowing that although he would not express his opinion now, he would eventually agree to King Rong's proposal. Since the emperor's ascension to the throne, the emperor has always agreed to whatever the king of Rongjun proposed. Some people are sorry, but naturally some people are happy. It is not that no one in the court knows that the vassal system is not good, but they dare not bring it up. In the final analysis, the entire country belongs to the Qi family. The emperor loves his younger brother and his son, and wants to distribute the family property to his younger brother and sons. What can they do as courtiers? The above persuasion will not only offend King Rong and the princes, but also offend the emperor, so it is better to keep silent. But now that Chi Heiran has voluntarily declined, the officials no longer have to worry about it. They just came out to agree with Chi Heiran's proposal after being shocked for a while, and some officials even praised Chi Heiran without blushing, saying that he is the number one in the age people, including those old and stubborn admonishers. Chi Heiran raised a smile triumphantly. Chi Ziyuan. Only Fan Zijian glanced at Chi Heiran and began to lower his head to think about the matter of equal emphasis on civil and martial arts he proposed just now. Now that Heiran has made up his mind not to confiscate the land, any more thinking about it will only make him depressed, so it is better to think about something that is practical and useful. But not everyone has Fan Zijian's kindness and wisdom, because the abolition of the vassal system caused a lot of quarrels between the court and the central government. The grandsons in the palace were the first to stand up against it. They didn't want to expose themselves like this, but most of the ministers in the hall agreed with Chi Heiran's proposal, and the rest were neutral and didn't express their opinions on it. The thing is settled. Those who opposed it had good reasons. First of all, as the emperor thought, the abolition of the vassal system in the previous dynasty led to foreign invasion and the country lost a large area of land. Secondly, Your Majesty, your family has a great cause, so you should let the princes watch and help each other. In the end, this is also the emperor's kindness. Parents always hope that their children will be good, so they will distribute such a large family fortune to their sons so that they can flourish and prosper. As soon as these three reasons were listed, there was no need for Chi Heiran to come forward. Many ministers in the court fought back, and the court was suddenly in chaos. Chi Heiran stared, couldn't help but turned his head and said to Fan Zijian behind him, "Shouldn't the focus of this court meeting be the simultaneous advancement of civil and martial arts? Obviously this is the most important thing, okay." He also wanted to suggest that martial arts should follow the Kuazijian later, and set up prefectural and county schools in various prefectures and counties, so as to ensure the supply of martial arts students. Why did they quarrel over the vassal system? Fan Zijian rolled his eyes at him, motioning him to look at the sunken emperor above. Chi Heiran turned his head and met the elder brother's eyes, and shrank his neck when he saw him staring at him. The officials below were already blushing from the quarrel, and some civil servants even rolled up their sleeves and started pushing and shoving, while the military officials stood on the periphery with their waists pinched, yelling at each other from time to time, not only expressing their own opinions, but also showing their attitude. Chi Ziyuan looked at the court hall like a vegetable market, slapped the table angrily, and retreated. All the ministers could only hold their faces and knelt down to see the emperor off. As soon as the emperor left, they patted their knees and stood up, grabbing each other and continuing to argue. Rongxian walked towards Chi Heiran with a smile, grabbed his hand, and said with a smile, "My lord, let's go see the emperor together." There was a bit of gnashing of teeth while speaking. "You said yesterday that you don't want to be a vassal king, you said yesterday that you would go back to choose a fiefdom, but you regretted it early this morning. It is simply unreasonable." Rongxian dragged Chi Heiran to see the emperor, and Fan Zijian Chi Shiran followed behind. Yan Du hesitated for a moment, then followed suit. As soon as Chi Heiran entered the door, a memorial flew towards him. Rongxian immediately jumped to the side to avoid it. Chi Heiran didn't dare to say too much, so he could only lower his head and let the memorial hit him on the head. Fortunately, the memorial came from the dragon chair. Flying here has weakened the strength, and it doesn't hurt at all. Chi Ziyuan was also very angry, pointed at his younger brother's nose and scolded, "Why didn't you tell me yesterday that you don't want to be a vassal king? Even if you gave me a little hint this morning, I don't ask you about the fief on the spot. Just mess around. You have to bring it up to make everyone quarrel, because you think the court is not chaotic enough now. You let Wen Su and the others think about you in the future." Chi Ziyuan yelled at the silly brother worriedly. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1129. Even if the vassal system is to be completely abolished, this responsibility should be borne by him. Besides Wen Chen, he has 5 sons. What if these children grow up to blame their uncle Qi Heiran? Qi Ziyuan was angry at his recklessness, but Qi Heiran didn't care much and said, I am their uncle, what can they do? Besides, this is a state matter, not to mention they are just my nephews. Even if you object to my eldest brother, what should be done? Qi Heiran spoke righteously, but Qi Ziyuan looked at him twice. Seeing his eldest brother pondering, Qi Heiran hurriedly said, Brother, you don't have to worry about the future of your nephews. Aling said, they are born rich and noble, no matter what line of work they are in, they have an advantage, and they can let them do whatever they want. To fight for it, I think what Aling said is right. Since ancient times, the descendants of the royal family are so unworthy. Isn't it because they don't need to work hard and can have glory and wealth? If you want to be an official in the court, you should go to the imperial examination. If you want to be a military general, you should join the army. Qi Ziyuan narrowed his eyes, aren't you afraid that they will all go to the throne? Qi Heiran smiled and said, Brother, how many nephews do you think are thinking about the throne? Qi Ziyuan was silent, and this is what he is proud of. He dare not say that he knows his 6 sons well, but he still knows a little about their thoughts. Now, except Wen Chen's ambition is still to be a good emperor, the other 5 the ideals of each child are varied, and I dare not say that they change one day, but most of them change their ambitions every 4 to 5 months. It all depends on their interests. No prince has yet aimed at the position of their eldest brother's prince. Seeing his younger brother looking at him eagerly, Qi Ziyuan waved his hands impatiently and said, Okay, I will consider this matter, go home, don't be an eyesore here. Wait, Qi Ziyuan saw Qi Heiran turn around and leave, so he stopped him, and said thoughtfully, I was confused just now, and vaguely heard you say what Aling said, so the matter of abolishing the vassal system is also the same. What did Aling say? Qi Heiran jumped up and ran outside, shouting, I promised Huda to take them to ride horses, and I will leave the palace first. Fan Zijin wanted to talk about martial arts with Qi Heiran, and he said goodbye to Qi Ziyuan, I think the Ministry of Household Affairs still has a lot of things to do, so I'm leaving first. He followed Qi Heiran out and disappeared in a blink of an eye. Silhouette. Qi Ziyuan stared angrily. Rongxian hid in the corner the whole time, stepped forward and smiled and said, Congratulations, Your Majesty, it is really a blessing for the prince to be accompanied by the concubine. Only then did Qi Ziyuan turn pale, half sour, half relieved, and said, he can also listen to Aling's words. Fortunately, Aling is broad-minded and very intelligent, otherwise. Being able to see the shortcomings of the vassal king system is naturally smart, and being able to resist the temptation of the vassal king's fiefdom is naturally broad-minded, and it is not ordinary broad. Rongxian smiled and said, the emperor chose her at the beginning, wasn't it because of her character? Qi Ziyuan was in a better mood, but he said stubbornly, someone insisted on her not marrying, otherwise how would I dare to harm someone else's good girl? After the alarm was lifted, Eunuch Wan came in cautiously and reported, Your Majesty is asking for an audience, and he is waiting in the side hall. Qi Ziyuan sat back on the dragon chair, said, Please come in, and said to Rongxian, since Heiran has pulled the matter apart, let's have a thorough discussion. To completely abolish the system of vassal kings, one must make an arrangement for the children of the royal family, whether to keep the princes in captivity in the capital like the previous dynasty, and only be idle kings, or as Heiran said, the children of the royal family can also enter the court as officials and join the army for generals. Can you travel around the world? Qi Heiran dropped a cannonball and patted his butt and left, but he wanted to deal with the aftermath. Qi Ziyuan couldn't help but feel a little headache when he thought about the follow-up matters. He originally thought about resting for the first half of the year, and then thought about these things when the children were older. Fortunately, Heiran has advanced these things for so many years with a single sentence. It seems that this year he will rest can't stop. Yandu had been waiting in the side hall for less than half an hour. He was not invited in until King Rong and Dukan had left. He looked up at Rongxian, who was sitting on the left, and saluted the emperor with his head down. Qi Ziyuan sat down and said, "I have sent people to inform the 6 ministers to come to discuss the matter." The discussion in the imperial study room was lively, and it was even red-faced when talking outside. Today, the entire Yamen in the capital is full of excitement. Not only the officials are excited, even the small officials are also excited. Out of the mouth of the vassal king, this prince is either a fool or a great saint who really serves the country and the people. However, Qi Heiran's external image and usual behavior are really hard for people to associate him with a saint, so more people tend to guess the former. Maybe this prince just slipped his tongue when he got too excited. But there are also a small number of people who insist that Qi Heiran is the heart of a child. Of course, there is another saying that has been recognized by the general public, that is, the prince and the emperor have a deep brotherly relationship and are concerned about each other's worries, which is why they put forward this suggestion. It is said that the emperor's face was very ugly in the early morning. From this, it can be deduced that the emperor who dotes on his younger brother still wants to give King Rong a fertile fief. Didn't the emperor unfold the map and let King Rong choose the fief? So some people began to speculate who would win and lose in the end between the two brothers, and someone even opened a bet in the casino. Most people think that the emperor will finally agree with King Rongjun's proposal. Some scholars specially analyzed it in the tea house. This plan benefits the country and the people even if the emperor favors King Rongjun. All officials agree, and King Rongjun persuades under such circumstances, the emperor will definitely agree, and at the worst, he will give more gold, silver, and jewelry to show his favor. What kind of gold, silver, and jewelry can compare to a large fiefdom? Some people feel sorry, but they have to agree that the scholar's analysis is correct. Mu Yangling's newspaper also specially printed an additional issue for this purpose, with a special report on this matter, publishing the cause and effect and analysis from all walks of life, and said that it would continue to follow up on this matter. Now even the peasants who work all day in the countryside know about this important event. There is no way to do it. The county governments in various places have to buy a few copies of the newspapers from the Mu Yangling newspaper office. National dynamics and policies, so as not to be fooled by corrupt officials. Many people were grateful for Qi Heiran's kindness, and kowtowed in the direction of the capital. Although they were ignorant people, they also knew that the feudal lands that were confiscated paid taxes and performed much more labor, because the feudal kings and their descendants and servants in the fiefdoms were supported by them. Although the world is big, there are also many descendants of the emperor. They may become subjects of the vassal king at some point, so they are very grateful to Qi Heiran and the others who made this suggestion. Qi Heiran harvested a bunch of faith and longevity tablets without knowing it. Seeing that everyone didn't notice his other proposal that day, Qi Heiran couldn't help but feel depressed. Master Mingming wants to emphasize the simultaneous advancement of civil and martial arts. This is an important measure to deal with foreign invasion after the abolition of the vassal system. Why is no one paying attention? Mu Yangling was glad that Qi Heiran had listened to her suggestion to abolish the vassal system, so he said without thinking, "It's okay. Leave this to me, I will definitely attract people's attention, and I will treat it as a reward for you." Qi Heiran looked at her with contempt. "This is considered a reward, but it's too cheap." "Then what do you want?" Qi Heiran looked around and saw the children playing on the grass in the distance, so he put his head in front of her. Mu Yangling glanced at the child, quickly kissed him on the face and pushed his head aside. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1130. The little lion opened his mouth wide, and quickly reached out to cover his sister's eyes, but Bezo hugged his neck and gnawed on his face with a giggle. As soon as Hudu made a shy gesture at his parents, he was carried behind by the little bear. Cub's ability to clear the field is super strong, and as soon as Mu Yangling's face turned red, he carried his younger brothers and sisters away, leaving only the husband and wife in this area. Chi Heiran saw that the people who hindered his eyes were all gone. He hugged Mu Yangling as soon as he rolled his eyes and said in a low voice, "Didn't you say that you want to pick some wildflowers and put them in vases? I will take you there." The tiger's head kept thumping in the little bear's hands, and he shouted, "Put me down, let me down, father, mother, save me quickly." Chi Heiran turned a deaf ear to Hutu's cries for help, and dragged Mu Yangling away. Hutu wanted to cry but had no tears, so he could only stare at the twin brothers. "Little lion, save me." The little lion put the orb on the grass, wiped the saliva off his face, and scolded him, "You have grown up, why don't you know how to take care of your younger brothers and sisters? Daddy and mother are playing and kissing, you should block their eyes." The tiger hung its head on the little bear's hand and asked, "Why do you want to block it?" "Because it's not suitable for children." Hutu retorted angrily, "Nonsense, both father and mother have kissed us, how can kissing be inappropriate for children?" "Then you are still ashamed of them," the little lion accused. "I'm ashamed that they still want to kiss at such an age. I forbade them from kissing me since last year." Little Xiong put down the tiger head with black lines all over his face, glanced at the ignorant little leopard and Beizu, and decisively took the tiger head and little lion aside for education. The little bear taught the little lion a lesson first. Tiger's head is simple and doesn't think too much, so you can give him more advice. Looking at Hutu again, seeing his face full of anger, he obviously didn't know what they were talking about. He sighed quietly, held his round face and said seriously, "Hutu, parents, we and our parents kissing is different. Of course, it's also different when you kiss your dad with your mother. Girls kiss you, and you are not allowed to kiss other girls, understand?" Hutu was full of disgust. "Why should I kiss other girls? They are so annoying, they will just chatter behind, or they will cry with their veils on. I didn't bully them." Little Bear added, "Boys are not allowed to kiss either." The tiger's head was horrified. "We are all so old, which boy can play kiss?" The little lion coughed lightly, took Hutu's hand, and said seriously to the elder brother who was about to go crazy, "Brother, Hutu is still young, he hasn't enlightened yet, wait for me to teach him slowly." Little Bear turned his head to look at him stiffly, and said dumbly, "Little lion, you are the same age as Tiger Head, you are less than 10 years old this year, have you already enlightened?" The little lion said proudly, "I been enlightened a long time ago, brother Xiaoan taught me." Little Xiong was shocked, his eyes widened and he saw his younger brother who could only see his chest. He was actually enlightened. Little Xiong is 13 this year. He was completely unconscious about the relationship between men and women before, so he went to fight with him because he was mixed in the military camp, and he also spent a short time with a group of veterans. He often heard them talking dirty. Knowing some things half understood, just like this, he dare not say that he has enlightened. In the end, his younger brother, who was 3 or 4 years younger than him, actually said that he was enlightened. Little Xiong didn't know what expression to make for a moment, so his face was blank for a moment before he showed anger, and he shouted at his brother. "Mother said, the children in our family have to wait until they are 18 years old at the earliest to get married. You just got it right, believe it or not, father and mother beat you to death." Little Xiong pinched his waist and asked, "What did Xiaoan teach you?" Hutu was also very angry. "Brother Xiaoan actually taught you and not me." The little lion roared back, "Brother Xiaoan obviously taught us together, but you didn't listen carefully." The little bear resisted the urge to slap the 2 younger brothers, turned the tiger's head aside, and strictly ordered him not to speak, then looked at the little lion, squeezed his hands and said, "Honestly recruit me." The little lion said aggrievedly, "It's not our fault, brother, why do you blame us?" After Mu Yangling and Xiao Xiong followed Chi Heiran to fight, the 4 children in the family were liberated. Xiao Xia couldn't hold Xiaoan down, and even Xiao Fu followed behind his brother all day long, and couldn't control it at all. With Xiaoan as a think tank, several children skipped class collectively within 2 days. The twins have a few brothers who play with them, they don't cry or make trouble, they laugh and giggle every day, they sleep when they are tired from playing, eat when they are full, and then play after eating. At the beginning, Xioxia and the queen were so indulgent because they were worried that the children would make trouble because their parents were not around. Now that they were playing crazy and gradually becoming lawless, they hurriedly took measures. The queen asked Xiaobao to go back to the study to study, but the twins started crying after half a day without the company of their brothers. Xiao Xia couldn't coax them, so they had to carry the twins into the palace, but they went to the study. You can't enter 2 milk dolls over 2 years old, right? So Hutu and the others didn't have to go to school in the end. The queen thinks that even if they don't have to go to school, they can't get together to play all day long. The tiger head and the little lion are lawless people, Xiaoan is resourceful, and Xiao Fu and the twins are also very mischievous. Whoa! Thinking of playing is all about playing, just find more children to play with them, and guide them to play purposefully, so that even nonsense is within their control. Moreover, it can also contact the backyards of the ministers during the war, which can minimize the problems of insufficient food and grass and delays in armaments. As a result, the wives of many ministers in the court received the post, or went to the palace to talk with the queen, or went to the Angwagong mansion or Rongjun Wangfu to have a banquet. The wives of ministers and wives understood what the empress meant when they went there once. The next time they received a post, they deliberately brought the little girls at home with them. Only when there were no young girls of the same age did they bring sons or grandchildren of the same age. No way, who made a group of children have only one Princess Beizhu, and the others are all boys. Not to mention the 3 princes, just a few young masters from the Wangfu and Kuagongfu made the ministers and wives look green. These are all future sons-in-law. As a result, several children were overwhelmed by a group of little girls. Xiaoan and the others simply didn't like to play with little girls at first, because they had different hobbies in fighting. They didn't like what they liked to play, and they didn't like what they liked. Girl, all kinds of bad ideas pop up. Fighting and brainstorming frightened a group of little girls. Xiaoan was so frightened that she beat up a few children for the first time, and Xiaoan was not convinced, and after hearing some gossip from the sloppy servants, she knew that those little girls wanted to find them husbands. He was already 10 years old, so he naturally knew what a husband-in-law was, so he told his younger brothers not to hold hands, talk, or play with those girls, otherwise they would marry them in the future, and they would be bored to death. Their biggest understanding of this matter is that they can't kiss girls, and they can't sleep in the same bed, otherwise they will have babies, and then they really can't get rid of them. And this is the enlightenment of a few children's deep understanding. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1131. Little Xiang heaved a sigh of relief, thinking that Brother Xiaoan, who was very smart, was nothing more than that. Mu Yangling, who came back from folding a bosom of flowers with Qi Heiran, listened to the ending. She raised her eyebrows and looked back and forth between her sons twice, then left meaningfully. Little Xiang blushed, opened his mouth and murmured, "Mom, it's not what you think." Mu Yangling placed the wild flowers he picked in vases on the tablecloth, while Qi Heiran led his sons back to the car and put the prepared ingredients on them. Since it's a picnic, barbecue is more popular, but the 4 children are still young. Mu Yangling worried that eating too much would be bad for their stomachs, so he went to the kitchen to chop some big bones, prepared the ingredients, and arrived early this morning. It was boiled here, and the pot was exuding a strong fragrance. The little leopard and Bezu were lying on the side of the pot, drooling, and shouted to their father inarticulately, "Eat meat, eat meat." Chi Heiran nodded and frantically opened the lid of the pot to add something. When Mu Yangling arranged the ingredients, Xiao Xiang had already set up the grill with his two younger brothers, and excitedly went to get the meat skewers to grill. Tiger Head and Little Lion saw so many delicious food, and felt a little regretful. It's a pity that Xiaoan and Xiaofu will stay at home to entertain their grandfather's family. Just take some back to them after you've baked it, Little Bear comforted the two of them. Xiao Xiao's father was going back to Beijing to report on his work, and Fan Zijin was likely to make further progress at that time, so the Xia family came to the capital with his family. Unfortunately, he arrived today, because the house had not been cleaned up, so he lived in Anguigong's mansion first. But Chi Heiran dropped a cannonball in the hall and ran away. Chi Xiaoyuan was afraid that he would muddy the water that had finally calmed down, so he strictly ordered him to stay at home and not run around. Of course, he was not allowed to go to the morning court. Chi Heiran couldn't wish for it, so he took his family out for a picnic and autumn outing the next day. He decided to go out for an autumn outing today, and tomorrow he would take his three sons to go hunting in the mountains, and later he would go to the farm for a few days. Because of this autumn outing, the relationship between father and son, mother and daughter has heated up sharply. Because the unfamiliar barrier of half a year has disappeared, the twins have followed behind their parents, and they will learn what their parents do. Chi Heiran was overjoyed, and discussed with Mu Yangling, "Why don't you go hunting with us tomorrow? You carry the orb, I carry the little leopard, and the tiger head and the little lion, they can already carry." They ran in the woods with their little bows and arrows, and let the bear take care of them for a while. Chi Heiran was full of confidence. The prey in autumn is fat, and this is the right time to hunt. Mu Yangling coughed lightly, motioned him to look at the people waiting on the road ahead, and said, "Don't talk about hunting, I'm afraid you won't be able to eat dinner with us." Chi Heiran followed her gaze, and Wang Gonggong rushed towards Chi Heiran with a big smile on his face, and was out of breath when he ran up to him. "My lord, the emperor has something urgent to call you into the palace for consultation." Chi Heiran regretted that he could only bid farewell to Mu Yangling. Chi Xiaoyuan and the ministers have discussed that the vassal system will be permanently abolished, and the princes can enter the court as officials and hold important powers, but it depends on their respective abilities. Chi Xiaoyuan called his younger brother into the palace for two things. One is to confirm the prince and issue an imperial edict. Because Chi Heiran suddenly opposed enfeoffment, he granted him the title of prince, and Zijin's decree as county king was not issued. Now that the system has been established, those who should be rewarded will naturally be rewarded. Affected by Chi Heiran, he lost his feudal land, and the county that Fan Zijin was sealed off also disappeared, so some things need to be rewarded again. Chi Xiaoyuan called the two of them into the palace to choose things from the treasury. The second is the simultaneous advancement of civil and military affairs that has been making a lot of noise in the past 2 days. Those who support the vassal king system have one reason: the vassal king can guard the vassal town for the emperor to avoid the disaster of foreign invasion in the previous dynasty. At that time, everyone focused all their attention on the first half of Chi Heiran's words and ignored the second half, but Mu Yangling's newspaper edited Chi Heiran's words and published them in the newspaper. Focus on guiding everyone to think about both civil and military development. Since you are afraid that you will not be able to defend the feudal town without setting up a vassal king, you should advance both civil and military, and vigorously develop martial arts. In this way, governing the country with literature and defending the country with martial arts, naturally you will no longer be afraid of foreign invasion. Because the civil officials want to support the abolition of the vassal system, they don't care about the civil and military disputes at this time, and they all agree. And the generals have no reason to object. Unlike Wenju, martial arts requires more strength. Not only the people in the Jianghu, but also ordinary people have an extra way out, and everyone naturally supports it. All of a sudden, everyone inside and outside the capital was talking about this matter. Mu Yangling created public opinion, and of course Qi Ziyuan wanted to take over the stick. At this time, Qi Heiran was called into the palace to discuss how to deal with this martial art. After Mu Yangling brought the children back home, he got into the study, found a book of medical skills from the bookshelf after a while, turned to the chapter on yin and yang, folded those pages, wrote a note and handed it to Li Shun. Give this book and note to Imperial Physician Wang. Li Shun took it in a daze, and respectfully sent it to Dr. Wang's yard. Imperial Physician Wang had just finished teaching his grandson a prescription. When he heard that someone was coming from the concubine's yard, he hurriedly put on his robe and came out to greet him. Seeing the content on the note, Dr. Wang was confused, but when he opened the folded part of the medical book, his face suddenly brightened. "Dr. Wang," Li Chun asked hesitantly, "what's wrong with you?" Physician Wang returned to his senses, and smiled awkwardly, "It's okay, it's okay." Wang Hao asked him to teach several young masters on the note, and the teaching time was written on it. He was a little puzzled. Did the princess ask him to teach several young men medical skills? But after reading the medical book, he realized that the princess asked him to teach the princes the difference between yin and yang, and the way of Dunlun. But shouldn't the princess arrange a room for the princes to teach them? Physician Wang shook his head holding the medical book, and went back to his room in a daze. He read the folded pages of medical books over and over again, and then remembered what the princess said in the past, "Blessings to the soul." Wang Tai immediately understood that the princess not only wanted him to teach them the difference between yin and yang, the way of Dunlun, but also take care of the body. Like the royal family, although the princes will not get married until the 16th or 17th year because they have to spread their branches and leaves, they will arrange for a court lady to teach Dunlun when they are 13 or 14 years old. But from a medical point of view, having sex so early is harmful to people's health and it is not a good thing to hinder the lifespan. For example, his Wang family, because it is a family of Xinglan, the children in the family, the boys have to get married after the age of 18, and they are absolutely not allowed to do anything wrong before the age of 17, and the girls try to stay until they are 16 or 17 before getting married. This is the bottom line. Like almost all of his children got married after they were 18. The reborn wife is farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1132. The princess puts more emphasis on health preservation, and he also heard from the princess that the young masters in the mansion will not get married until they are 18 years old. Since he is asked to give lectures to the princes, it is naturally impossible to simply talk about the relationship between men and women. Don't compare it with Dunlun's way, but should discuss it more in depth. Dr. Wang stroked his chin and began to think about the lesson plan. He also gave lectures to the princes, most of them imparted some medical knowledge, and he was no stranger to teaching plans. Little Xiong added another biology course without them knowing, and came back from school in the palace happily every day. What greeted them was no longer delicious food, but the smiling face of Dr. Wang. The children were shocked. Hutu and Dr. Wang stared at each other. The little lion hurriedly went to look for the schedule in his school bag. Xiaoan frowned and said righteously, "Dr. Wang, the class is once every 7 days, and there is no class for you today." "I know this, but that's the old timetable." Dr. Wang took out a new timetable from his sleeve. "This is the timetable just made by the princess. I added a class. 1 class every 2 days, young masters, don't worry, there aren't many classes, and if everything goes well, you should be able to finish the class a year ago." The children were a little dissatisfied at first, but when they heard that the course was so short, they were all curious. "I can finish the course after only 3 months of teaching. Isn't that too fast?" Xiaoan took a look at the schedule, and frowned, "On my Oji. What kind of theory is this? Why have I never heard of it?" Even the most knowledgeable Xiaoan didn't understand. Hutu and Xiaoshi hurriedly turned to look at their eldest brother. Little Bear also frowned and shook his head. I haven't heard of it either. Imperial Physician Wang said with a smile, Yin-Yang theory is actually the simplest theory. Everything in the world is divided into yin and yang. For example, men are yang and women are yin. Physician Wang explained to them in a soft voice while walking, and this was the first lesson of their yin and yang studies. Imperial Physician Wang didn't specialize in Mr. Zhou, but he was funny and he was familiar with several young masters, so the lectures were not only fascinating, but also able to tickle the children's itch, so the 5 children listened carefully. Xiaoan and Hutu were excited and asked for extra classes. As the teacher, Dr. Wang was naturally happy that the lectures were popular with the students, so he complied with the children's request. When the extra class was added, it was Mu Yangling who prepared dinner and asked Lidong to call the children over for dinner, and they dispersed. Mu Yangling took 2 chopsticks of green vegetables for Xiaoan and Xiaofu, and told them not to be picky eaters before saying, I'll ask someone to take you back in a while. Xiaofu buried his head in eating hard, while Xiaoan shook his head and said, we're going to sleep with Hutu and the others tonight. No, Mu Yangling said, someone from the palace announced the decree. Your father has just been promoted from Duke to County King. There must be a lot of guests at home, and your grandfather is still living at home. You are the little master, how can you not be at home? Xiaoan wrinkled her nose and looked at Xiao Shize. They planned to discuss how to deal with Mr. Wang tonight. If they had known that they would not let Dr. Wang add extra classes, it was really a mistake. Mu Yangling continued, you are the eldest son, your father is now in the palace, and you are the only one in charge of the family, helping your mother share the burden. What if your mother is too busy if you don't go back? Xiaoan sighed, and said maturely, okay, I'll go back after dinner. Little Xiang was very puzzled. Daddy has also changed from a county king to a prince. Why is no one coming to our house? Can Mu Yangling say that because his father is mighty and majestic, and she is unkind, there are very few people who dare to visit him? However, there were not many people who came to be guests, but there were quite a few who came to give gifts. According to Zhu Yang, he was very busy today just receiving gift lists and receiving gifts. The tiger wiped his mouth and said, those people must have gone to the second uncle's house first before coming to our house. Brother Xiaoan, why don't we accompany you back to treat the guests, and then you come to my house to help us treat the guests, okay? Xiaoan's eyes lit up, that's a good idea. In this way, they can continue to discuss things at night. The little lion received Xiaoan's wink, and hurriedly expressed to Mu Yangling their strong desire to live in Anqiagong's mansion. The children of the 2 families often switch places, just like Xiaoan and Xiaofu have their own room here, the tiger-headed little lion and the others also have their own room in Anqiagong's mansion. As usual, Mu Yangling agreed without even thinking about it. But now the Duke of Anguo's mansion is living in Xiao Xiao's natal family. Didn't the 2 children cause trouble in the past? Little Xiang seemed to know what his mother was thinking, patted his chest and said, Mother, I will go there with my brothers, don't worry, I will take good care of them. When the twins heard that their elder brother was going too, they clamored to follow. Mu Yangling looked at the twins pitifully and said, you have all gone to Uncle Fan's house, so only mother will be left at home. Beza hurriedly touched her mother's face and said, it's not pitiful, my sister is with you. The little leopard hesitated for a moment, looked at his mother, then at his brothers. Beza slapped him on the head when he saw it, and scolded him seriously, because he spoke too fast. All the people present except clenched their fists and chirped back. No one can understand except the little leopard. In the end, under Mu Yangling's pitiful eyes and Beza's suppression, the little leopard still stayed with his mother, and the little bear took his 2 younger brothers and Xiao and Xiaofu to Anguagong's mansion. Anguagong's mansion is coming in and out with bright lights. The plaque on the gate has been taken off, just wait for the new plaque to arrive and replace it. The little lion asked curiously, Brother, Why didn't we take off the plaque in our house? Mother lazy, Xiao Xiang said flatly. She must be planning to wait for the new one to arrive before replacing it, so as not to have to work twice. Xiao Xiang brought the 4 children into the mansion, turned to Xiaoan and said, "Your family probably has to move. This mansion is too small to be used as a duke's mansion, and it would be even more unreasonable to use it as a mansion for a county prince. And there are people from both the left and right families stay, it's not easy for your family to drive people away." At that time, Fan Zijian was eager to get rid of Fan Siwen's control. The mansion was left by an official from the previous dynasty at random, and he lived in it after a simple repair. In the past few years, he either went to Lingnan or Guangzhou. Therefore, it has not been repaired much, and it is much worse than Qi Heiran's prince's mansion. And now that he has been promoted from the Duke of the State to the King of the County, the mansion must be expanded and repaired. Xiaoan worried, "Where can I change it?" "Let's change to Brotherhood's house." Xiao Fu pulled his brother's sleeve and raised his head. "I want to play with Little Leopard and Beizu." Xiao Xiang blinked at Xiaoan. "Aren't those houses across from my house empty? When the second uncle comes back, you can talk to him properly."